Next up, it's our brand new award for 2021. It's Character of the Year. One that we had kind of, I think we'd all pretty much agreed was overdue to be added.
Yeah.
Um, I'm happy to see it on this year. And what a colorful bunch of characters we have this year. On our inaugural shortlist, we have Agent 47, Hitman 3, Charlie Montague from Deathloop, Cosmo, Guardians of the Galaxy, Dr. Hakim, The Book of Love, It Takes Two, Ethan from Resident Evil Village, Heisenberg from Resident Evil Village, Lightman from The Artful Escape, Mantis from Guardians of the Galaxy, Pothead from Death's Door, and Steph from Life is Strange, True Colors. It's a very competitive category. Let's see how it goes with our first up to the plate as soon as the Wheel of Fate starts working again. That is, it's Mark.
Ooh. Okie dokie.
Thank God it's not me again this time.
I'm just going to put it out. I'm just going to put it out there. I hate Dr. Hakim.
I knew exactly what you were going to do.
From the moment he appeared on the screen, I was like, I fucking hate this book.
We played this. We should have streamed it, Mark. We should have streamed it. We played this game for about 2 hours one night, the two of us, before the last AEW pay-per-view, I think. And every successive time he showed up, we were just shouting at the screen.
He's
this
mischievous.
Motherfucker. he's a wanker, is what he is.
I kind of liked him as a amping up of that kind of family children's animated movie trope of the person who's teaching your lesson, but he's a dickhead. He's like, oh, I'm here to help you. I'm going to throw you to the wolves now.
But he actually comes off more as the type of children character that like 30 years later gets swept up in an investigation.
Okay.
Jesus, Dave, like just to pull everyone behind the curtain here. Dave is the one who does the shortlist when we send all of our shit through, and I can only feel like he's included Dr. Hakim here to bury him.
No, not even just for me, because I knew what Mark would. I knew Mark would take exception to this. So as soon as I saw Barry had nominated, I was like, "He's right in. He's right in here."
Actually,
spice.
I forgot to say. So I nominated him. I will not object. He's grating. I'm not going to say he's not grating. I thought it was goofy and fun, but he's definitely grating. I will not protest. I did have I know we've actually already started here. I did have a last minute write-in.
Oh, here we go.
Is it every other character from Death's Door? Because I agree.
Right, Murphy.
There was. I did I settle on Pothead? I feel like there was probably. I don't know if that's even the best pick. And because this is someone I'm bullish on as well, and I think he should be in this category. Ford Cruller from Psychonauts.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
There's
a lot of characters from Psychonauts.
To be honest, I had nominated, but no one else had, and he got bumped off. Helmut Fullbear.
Yeah. As Mark said, there's a lot. So today I binged into the. I haven't finished, but I'm on the final act of Psychonauts. I literally had to stop to do this.
Yeah.
So sorry, we won't do him just yet. But just that was my write-in.
Yeah. I could have done Agent Forsyth. I could have done Nona. I could have done Nick John Smith.
Yes. So many great ones.
I literally completed that game 24 hours ago. I finally finished it. I kind of was spending a lot of time just wandering around in the world. I didn't want to finish it, but knew I had to talk about it on this. But again, like you said, we'll talk about it.
I think Ford is, again, they're all great. Probably the most complete and surprisingly complex of them. And they're all better than Dr. Hakim, so I will let him go.
Yeah. Goodbye, you absolute turd, Dr. Hakim.
We'll see you again, Dr. Hakim.
Right. Thank God for that. If that had been a fight, I don't know if me and Barry would have been friends after this. Right. Next up, it's Jack.
Oh, blimey. So there's two on here from a game I really like. I don't know if I want to cut at this point. There's a couple on here from games I really like. Charlie Montague from Deathloop.
I like Charlie. I don't think I don't think he wins.
No, I don't think.
He probably doesn't win. I guess.
Yeah, so, he gotta win.
Similar to Psychonauts. I was like, which of the group do I like the best? Should I just put the group? That's annoying. We're not picking a group. We need to pick a character. So I picked Charlie Montague because I thought he was of those wonderfully realized like dickhead Illuminati up their own arse pricks.
Was it the Eternalists? Is that what they're?
I think that's what they were called. Yeah, Eternalist. That was it. Yeah, he was the perfect embodiment of that. They have his shitty little forbidden romance with the girl. He wrote the song itself was actually good, but when you listen to the lyrics, wherever you go, the one that plays every now and then in that one area, like he writes this song to his girlfriend, and then he also like runs a fun house, but like takes it super seriously and has a little bit of a real life kind of carnival murder game going on, and then also took out half of his brain and put it in a robot, and then put half of the robot's brain into his own head. Like I think he had, and then his actual characterization is very childish and very. He has all of that going for him, and he's just like a little annoying, childish little shithead. I thought he was great encapsulation of what that game portrays their Illuminati elites as. But really, yeah, like I said, I was actually kind of agonizing over could I put in the group, and I didn't want to do that. I think as a singular character on his own, he probably doesn't hang. But I think he was a fun idiot to kill over and over and over again.
Fun idiot. Yeah. That's a good summation.
Yeah.
So we'll take him off at this point on the basis, like you said, Barry, that he probably won't win here. Barry, we are sticking with you for this next one.
Okay. Two characters.
I feel like he could have like Knives Out at this point after those first two.
No, I tell you what, because I could probably guess whose passion project is whom on this list, but I also like all of those characters as well. So I'm actually kind of looking at some of my own here. There's two characters here from a game I love. Two characters I think I nominated, but there's
I also nominated both of them if they're the ones I think.
If they're what you're thinking. Of the two of them, I would have to cut Heisenberg.
Yeah, of the two of them.
And I think,
and that surprises me.
Yes,
because if you had told me that the other one would be staying, at the start of the game,
so
I would be surprised.
So we do have Ethan, and just to recap, we do have Ethan and Heisenberg from Village on here, and I think part of what I love about Village, and this is probably a separate conversation to later, is they took a lot of the really goofy but played totally straight aspects of Village and like doubled down on them and worked them into the canon of Village a lot more, and that's embodied with Ethan. I had so much fun with that character. We'll probably talk about him later on in this category. Heisenberg is your quintessential really fun Resident Evil villain, and
cool as fuck looking.
The steampunk shit that he creates, that factory is
the glasses,
his whole section,
he looks like somebody that was taken out of
Kojima game,
but a Kojima game, or like he also looks kind of Bloodborne-esque. Do you know what I mean? Not again like a kind of if there was like a movie adaptation of Bloodborne, do you know what I mean? Like not actual Bloodborne, because nobody is that kind of like, he'd be like a weird kind of almost meta character in a Bloodborne, but like there's aesthetically some Bloodborne.
He looks like an anime character, but a good anime character.
Yeah. I mean, like he looks like a great player that you would cosplay as. Like imagine people turn
out,
and I'm sure they will.
Fuck all this Lady Dimitrescu shit. All right, just give me some Heisenberg.
But here's what I was gonna say is that like I think the characters up and down that game, both in terms of how they look and the characterization, are class.
Yeah,
I loved Lady Dimitrescu.
The fucked up doll thing. I can't remember what the name of that character
in the Beneviento house.
Yes.
What I like about Heisenberg as well, just because we're giving him his due before we cut him, is I like that he's the kind of double agent. He's like, look, fuck the freaks. I completely agree with you. He's killed the tall lady, whatever. But you have to do things my way if we're going to work together.
Very much the Revolver Ocelot.
Yes. I was going to, Jesus Christ, you just jumped all over my point. That's exactly what I was going to say. And that is why I loved Heisenberg so much, is because, and that was going to be my final closing remark, is that I loved Heisenberg so much because he reminds me of, and very specifically, Metal Gear Solid 3 Vintage. Ocelot when he was a bit younger and he was a bit less downtrodden.
Not Shalashaska era.
Yeah. And he was like fucking flipping back and forth. And at some stage, I was pretty sure he was a triple agent.
Yeah.
You weren't really sure if he was Russian or Chinese or on the US side. And all over.
One of the coolest things, and I didn't even put it down for my moment of the year because I had other choices that I would have felt stronger about. But like the characters are so good in that game that moment where you meet all of them in the church.
Yeah, in the warehouse thingy. Yeah.
But after Heisenberg kidnaps you and drags you in front of all of them is so cool, and getting to meet them all individually. Like there's a sad kind of tragedy to Moreau as well, but I kind of I nearly put Moreau on this list as well because of that. Like I think there are arguments for all of them, and even somebody that I think was maligned by a lot of people at first. By the end of the game, I really enjoyed the Duke.
Yeah.
Yes.
A lot of people gave him shit, and I quite liked him by the end.
He kind of freaked me out. There's something very overly creepy, gluttonous about him that I didn't initially like, but by the end of the game, anytime I saw him, I was like, oh, thank God nothing's trying to murder me in this section.
Weirdly,
I can buy some supplies.
This creepy guy, who is again the embodiment of gluttony, but also looks like he's kind of rotting from the inside out.
Yeah.
He also, by the end of the game, is one of your only friendly faces.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but Heisenberg can go. Let's not labor the point.
I would say Moreau as well. Before Moreau turns into a giant fish monster, it is Heisenberg's
sentence.
Yeah, but Heisenberg's relationship with Moreau, where he just considers him so beneath him, but that's kind of how Heisenberg feels about all these freaks. It's I don't give a shit about anyone. Barry said he's a double agent. This is a means to an end.
One of the things I love is you don't expect from Resident Evil game the level of complexity of the relationships between the different bad guys and stuff like that. The relationship between Dimitrescu and Heisenberg, where she constantly refers to him as a child. She's constantly belittling him because he was the last one to be turned by Mother Miranda. So Lady Dimitrescu really looks down at him more than the others. And he has an inferiority complex about that. All that it's just so good. God, I love that game. But we'll talk about it more. There's no point in
one last Heisenberg, great voice acting as well. I can't remember the voice actor's name, but tremendous performance.
Yeah. Right. I'm next. Fuck, this is already tough.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I will cut him because I voted for him. And I know Mark is probably the one that's most likely to back me on this, but I just felt like he should get his due. I don't think he wins, but Lightman from the Artful Escape. I love the Artful Escape. I'm so thankful to Mark for putting this on my radar and that I got to play through it. And look, any other year, I'm pushing much harder for a guy who is essentially Space Bowie being voice acted by Carl Weathers. That is just a recipe for success. And he's really good in this. But compared to some of the other characters here, I can't, in all good conscience, push him much further. It'd only be, I think he only survives one or two more rounds of this at best for me. So unless Mark has a particular objection.
Guess, no, I do like him. There's a real... they're kind of 60s, 70s, real just era of space and stardust and philosophy.
There's a Bootsy Collins vibe to him as well.
Yeah, he kind of. Do you know what I like about him is that he has the Bootsy Collins Bowie-esque music and personality side down, but he comes across as a weathered bluesy jazz man who'd done all the clubs and has all the knowledge and is calling you young blood and shit, all that kind of stuff innate in him. Yet at the same time, he's this celestial guitar god being who looms this massive presence over the whole weird universe that you're entering. He's showing you to the cosmic lung, and everywhere you go, everyone's oh, Lightman. He's just constant he's your mentor, and then when he feels you're getting too big for your boots, he's kind of he becomes your competition. And when he can see the end of his own demise, what I love about Lightman is that he doesn't want to just go out like that. He wants to kind of still be Lightman from when he was younger, and he still wants to impress.
When you keep saying it, I just keep thinking of The Nightman Cometh.
Yeah, the Lightman.
There
color.
is-
Lightman.
There's a slight kind of Randy the Ram vibe to him in
Yes.
some
Yeah,
ways,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, because it would have been really easy to write him as just like this sort of like
Turncoat.
space Jimi Hendrix, just fucking shooting off like all of these kind of like yeah man quotes and whatever, and like he has some great quotes in the game, but there is like a depth to him that slowly unravels throughout the game while your mind is being blown by the audio visual combination. Like I think he is a great character, and he probably actually has more depth than like I fucking love Cosmo, right? But like Lightman probably has a lot more depth to him as a character than Cosmo.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
Cosmo is a Russian space dog, and
Yeah.
I mean, that is
Pretty cool
hard
as well.
to
You
deny.
can't fight that.
I can't fight that. Yeah. So like if I was wearing my I don't know, slightly more pretentious trousers, maybe I put a fight for Lightman, but he probably doesn't win.
I
so.
did.
You
I
got to
did
fight
like
it for your light.
that kind of, and Jack kind of alluded to this as well. It's like kind of like the turn at the end of that game. It's not like Lightman is like this kind of mustache twirling, kind of stabs you in the back kind of character. It's like you said, he's just that kind of. He becomes your kind of competition, and he doesn't quite. He likes you, and he wants to help you, but he does not want to give up being Lightman effectively. You know,
It's
and I think
just
that's
that
great.
desperation of like your star is fading at the end, and you kind of clutch into it, and it's not done out of maliciousness. It's
No.
just it's
Yeah.
what you are. It's who you are. It's like this is what I've been, my life, and I don't want to let go of that.
Yeah,
Mm.
I feel like I have so much more to say, but I'm just going to save it for when we talk about the Artful Escape later. But he's a great character, and he deserves his dues.
Mark, you're next.
Oh, geez. All right. Maybe this is a hot take. I don't know. Like I did vote for him as well. I do enjoy the character of Agent 47. But I don't know. Like, is he
I was
winning
gonna,
this?
yeah.
Is he winning this list?
Yeah, no,
he's not.
I don't think so.
Oh,
I think it's less about the character of 47, the person that I find interesting, and more the situations or things that happen to him. That's not necessarily characterization for me.
Yeah.
Name one thing that motherfucker can't do though. Like in that game,
Yeah.
he's like he can play the drums. Like he can turn his hand to pretty
Yeah.
much. He can turn his hand.
He can be a badass sheik.
Yeah, he can be a sheik. He can turn his hand to anything. He can be like a sommelier. He knows about wine. He's always
Male
got
model.
a line. Look, I just got a shout out because I mean, it sounds like the three of you have kind of decided, I'm just guessing from your facials, you've decided to cut Agent 47, which is fine. I have never heard in video games, aside from maybe like Charles Martinet, a voice actor who is more perfect for a role than David Bateson is for Agent 47.
It's those two. The guy who does Geralt as well in the Witcher game is perfect for him. Yeah, it's like a Hall of Fame.
It just brings like a level of and you like there's like an hour-long interview that if anyone loves Hitman, I suggest watching, and we'll talk about Hitman later, I'm sure. But it's just all of the actors, like all the voice actors for the game, and David Bateson obviously takes up a massive portion of the interview. And he just loves this character. He feels embodied by it. And the fact that at some stage they try to take it away from him, and then he gets the opportunity to not only be brought back as Agent 47, but be brought back in this magnificent series. And he is just as great in Hitman 3 as he was from day one of him doing this fucking job. He's so good. And that to me adds a lot of the characterization from it. It's like every quip, like Agent 47 is like Murder Spider-Man, right? Where he's always got a line, he's always pitching something, he's always like hinting at what he's gonna do, and no one ever really like gets it. You know, like no one is as witty and as on the ball as Agent 47, but he does it. He doesn't like hit the line where he's like, oh, and this and that, and I'm gonna kill you in this way.
He never winks. He never winks.
Exactly. He chucks every line away.
Yeah.
It's just so cool. Everything about it, the whole look, and particularly his characterization of becoming the world's greatest detective. And again, this is a thing that I'm not going to go too deep in because I know we'll talk about it later. The world's greatest detective in that Dartmoor section of Hitman 3, like that is David Bateson at like his absolute perfect. And Agent 47, some of the funniest shit, weirdest scenarios, all the characters that you're interacting with there, and it's so good. It honestly, love Agent 47 through that whole section is just unbelievable. It might be the funniest and best he's ever been in any Hitman performance. I get it. Like, he's a fucking murder machine with a barcode on his head and a lot of quips. Like, there's not much more to him than that if you want to really break it down to the surface. But I just feel like, A, I wanted to give David Bateson his flowers, and B, I think we need to acknowledge just how perfect that character is. But it's a character that we've seen throughout the years, and, you know, they try to do some cool story stuff with it, but we didn't get much of a development and an evolution of what 47 is.
I think that's where it falls down, because I completely agree with you on like that character is perhaps even maybe a little bit underrated for just one of the great comedy characters maybe ever in a video game. In a game, but I think again it's something like Mark said earlier, putting my really pretentious fucking hat on. What all these other nominees kind of have that I wish 47 had is a more complete story to tell, I guess, and Hitman, as much as I love the Hitman 2016 trilogy, one of the greatest comebacks ever, and 3 is a phenomenal game, the actual story stuff did not hit for me one iota in these games, including 3. And I thought 3 was a bit of a wet fart of an ending for that stuff as well.
And I gotta say, though, if this was Deadpan Character of the Year, wins it by laps.
Yeah.
I almost feel like it would stand to this game's series if there was no through line plot in them. If they said, here's the fucking new maps.
Yeah.
What's the story? The story is your Agent 47. I feel like I would almost fight to keep him on, but it is slightly tainted by the fact that like there is a character.
I will say now, I didn't actually play Hitman 2, so it probably doesn't help. I actually don't know what the story of Hitman is.
I played them all and I don't either. So
I have no idea.
Look, I will say though, from the one thing that you can't deny is that those little intro videos where they set up, and it doesn't matter about the story. That's where the story happens at the end of the missions, and at that point you don't care. You just want to see if you beat your mates or what your score was, or if you unlocked all of the things to get guns or whatever.
Right.
But the little things where they tell you how much of a bollocks the people you're trying to murder are, they are really fucking funny.
I gotta say, it's very funny to me that 2 of our games of the year from 2016, Hitman and Doom, both of them very Mark Robinson in as much as the story couldn't matter a fuck in either of those.
It's true, yeah.
And like, at least Hitman went on and the story still couldn't matter a fuck. But in Doom Eternal last year, it's like they tried to make the story a thing.
Yeah,
we won't get back into that. We won't get back into that. Make me sad all over
and like, considering how much I know me, you, and Barry care about story, that just is a high watermark of how fucking good Doom and how fucking good Hitman is, right?
To play, right, Jack, you're next.
Oh, bollocks. Oh dear, this is tough here.
It's the problem when you get worked up about the last nomination or whatever that you're talking about, that suddenly you get bombarded like, oh shit, right now I need to focus on whatever the next one is.
I mean, it was always going to be me with 47 though, wasn't it? I gotta defend him. He's my guy. I know nothing about the person that Barry just smuggled onto the list at the last minute, so I don't know.
Oh man,
Ford Cruller, like, because not only
why is he not okay, right?
It's
fine.
weird
Everything you've all just said, right? You've all just leapt to the defense of Ford Cruller, which is great. It kind of sounds like a pastry from a coffee shop sponsored by a motor company. That's cool, right? Why is he not on the list in the first place?
In my defense, I've been binging Psychonauts 2 this week in preparation for this game. The other 2, I don't know what their excuse is. So I would have got this guy on.
So the Ford Cruller section is about 2/3 of the way through the game where you really get to know that character, and that was the part I only got to after the cutoff. He is definitely getting on here, and by the time I finish Psychonauts, my list is probably 5 or 6 Psychonauts characters.
I can say with certainty, looking at our short list, I think I nominated 4 or 5 of those characters. I can say with 100% certainty, Jack, if I played Psychonauts in January, he would have been on there with a bullet, absolutely, without a question of doubt.
He is like, Barry wrote him in, and he's probably sailed in at probably, I would say, number 2 on my personal list now.
He's high for me. He's high.
again, I hate to be that guy like that's like, oh, rules, but I don't. That doesn't feel right to me.
But if that was the case, we wouldn't have the option to have like.
Yeah.
I didn't know we
yeah.
had to have writings.
We've had that every year.
We've had it
We've
for
had that
7
every year.
years,
We've had
Jack.
that every year. Yeah.
What? I never write another thing. I'm gonna write in everything to all the rest of these categories.
He's gonna write back in 47 now.
I tell you what, let's just
Age of 48.
the thing with Ford Cruller, like more than anything else, I think for me is the way that, and this is like the thing about Psychonauts 2 altogether, is the way that it weaves in the story and the gameplay in a way that just, even though like, you know, it does have the, hey, you have cutscene and then you have gameplay, then you have cutscene, then you have gameplay. Like the story is what is happening in, you know, the levels that you're in. That is kind of part of what makes Psychonauts what it is that the story is wrapped around like how these levels are built, what you're seeing, what the imagery means, the symbolism of it all. And, you know, I feel like the best example you could probably point to in either Psychonauts 1 or 2 is the stuff with Ford Cruller and about finding the parts of his fragmented memories.
This is it. Like his mind is broken, and you spend 3 significant portions back to back in this game in 3 very different aspects of his personality. And through that come like his motivations, his backstory, what has gotten us and the Psychonauts into the situation they're in. He's a very layered and complicated character who has
in
made
a way that you don't get, like if you play the original Psychonauts, his character is kind of like a one-trick pony, you know, and then they so massively expand on like why he is how he is.
Incredible. Like
So
he's like on this list remaining. He's he's definitely the most detailed character of the lot of them. And even if you included the people we've already eliminated, he's distantly the most fleshed out character of all of them.
I have someone on this list that I kind of feel like would challenge that, but I guess
Russian Space Dog.
But so for like if you haven't played the game, like for Psychonauts 1 and 2, he's kind of like a little bit of a comic relief character. He's kind of like he kind of has a gimmick where he appears to be teleporting all over the place. You go to the shop, he's working behind the till, then he's pushing a broom outside, then he's unclogging a toilet. He's like all over the place. And then basically, again, to get into spoiler territory, for 2, you basically realize that he's and he's kind of a kooky older guy, like with he kind of looks a bit like Albert Einstein.
He is, by the way, for people without context, he's one of the 6 founders of the Psychonauts, the Psychic 6. So he is like a world famous psychic, even if he does come across as a bit of a kook, particularly in the first game.
So you find out then in the second game that he is effectively, you see him popping up doing all these wacky jobs all over you're effectively in Psychic MI6 is where the game is basically set. And he's basically, because of past trauma, a sort of origin story of sorts that ties him to the lead antagonist of the game, he has fractured his personality.
He had to do something, and it literally and metaphorically broke him.
And Psychonauts, what's really great about it, and it's one of those things, it's like if you were to read the greatest lyrics of a song ever of all time, if you sit here and read them, it doesn't quite do it justice. So I feel like whenever I talk to people about this game and I talk about the visual metaphors in the game, they sound really dumb and obvious, and I feel like you literally cannot do justice to how effective the game is.
So
it's kind of like
heart-wrenching.
It's really heart-wrenching, and it does it all in a kind of like I don't know if it's necessarily the most kid-appropriate game ever, but it feels like it's got this art style and sensibility of like a phenomenal Nickelodeon cartoon from the 90s that doesn't actually exist in communicating some of these concepts and things like that. So basically, to reassemble his psyche as best you can, you have to find his 3 people doing odd jobs around the center and jump into his brain and decipher a certain puzzle within these like platforming labyrinths and figure out what happened to him, what brought him to this point. And you basically you find out that once upon a time, he and another founding member of the Psychonauts, they had a relationship, and it went astray for various reasons, and then she became a villain. But one of the levels is they're all so stylized, and again, you can't really do justice to it, but you go to him and one of his personalities is working in the mailroom, so you jump in his brain and it's this big beautiful labyrinthine nightmare mailroom with letters flying all over the place, and there's a giant robot personification of himself insisting that everything be sorted correctly, and you effectively find out that this like love letter he wrote to this person was not addressed correctly because the country she went to stopped existing. It stopped existing. Shades of the Tom Hanks movie, The Terminal, and so effectively his heartfelt love letter went undelivered, and so you're like running around this whimsical, nightmarish mailroom visualization, trying to get this letter and properly address it to unlock that story that you can then figure out. You know, you can free that one section of his personality while you yourself, the player and the character, are also understanding what happened.
Yeah. And what's another layer that adds to how heart-wrenching it is that like as you're repairing these fractured parts of his mind, you're seeing him start to remember who she was. So he's remembering what he lost, but he's also then remembering what he's done. And those two things happening in tandem with one another is just like it eats at you. Like it's such a fucking phenomenal game. And he might be like, again, like I said, there's a bunch of different characters. There's even characters who pop up where I'm like, oh, they're just popping up for a level, and I end up like so emotionally invested in their story, like Bob Zanotto, who's like the brother of one of the other Psychic Six. You're like, oh, he's popping up, and there's like a charming like game with him where he's working on his garden, and then like he pops up at these different mini levels as a seed, Bulb Bob, and you think it's great, and then you find out his story and his history with a character I've already mentioned as well, Helmut Fullbear, and it just breaks your heart all over again. The Helmut Fullbear section where you're basically trying to put this guy's band back together so you can remember who he is, heartbreaking as well. But Ford Cruller is the best written in a game full of incredibly well written characters. And like you, Barry, if I had completed this game earlier in the year, possibly number one with a bullet. You know what I mean? The only thing that would hold me back from saying number one, absolutely dead on, is like I said, I only rolled credits finally and just went, look, I have to do the last bit of this game. I only did that last night. Do you know what I mean? Other than that, it would be boom right there. I have no doubts in my mind whatsoever.
And especially because, like you said, the stuff with him is actually fairly deep in the game. He is
it's probably like the last thing you do before you start, like the ball starts rolling towards the end game. Yeah,
because he is like he has some significance prior to that and in the first game, but he is largely a comic relief character, which kind of makes it even more interesting in this game. To see him dissected. So I wouldn't have thrown him on there, just to get a mention in. Like I do legitimately think I'd be pretty bullish on him, and looking at the remaining options, he's top two for me as well, possibly even number one. So
he is at worst number two for me.
Okay, so pick Mantis or Cosmo from Guardians of the Galaxy. Then I would say.
I would say like. Look, Cosmo will get his due in another category. That's why I would say that. Also, I think in terms of actual writing, I think Mantis is the more clever, because the way Mantis plays with things like tenses and probabilities and multiverses in her. I think
she's the funnier character of the two.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Cosmo is like a pretty much a very good take on Cosmo from the comics, whereas Mantis is like, they've done something slightly different to her appearances in, say, the Guardians movies, for example. Yeah. And just the way she is, like every second she's on the screen, she's great.
She's a bit cheekier, I think. Like she had, do you know what I mean? Yeah. She's like, there's a bit more to her. Like she's kind of amusing herself a little bit more. She was very sort of solemn and, like one in the Guardians of the Galaxy.
And naive.
Yeah, there's a naivety, like a lockdown. I mean, she was essentially a prison by ego for God knows how long. They don't even really tell you. So I think she hasn't had much of an outside world experience. Whereas, like I say, this Mantis is just out for having a bit of a good time and having a bit of a laugh.
There's a great bit of dialogue as they're walking around at one place where there's like, oh, Peter Quill says to her like, oh, are there other universes in which we know each other? And she goes, there's a couple that we got married in, and she's just basically like, oh, that didn't work out well.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree. I'm how to cut Cosmo. Like you say, he probably gets a mention later on down the line.
Yeah. Okay, so Barry, you're next.
I don't think he hangs with the other heavy hitters here. Pothead can probably go, I'm afraid. I think there's a couple of really good characters in this. Again, I'm kind of looking at myself. I'm kind of surprised that I nominated Pothead over some of the others. I think Death's Door is probably a more interesting conversation to have overall story
as a whole piece.
I think it's a piece. Yeah, I think it's one. The real meat is in the length and breadth of the actual story and some of the themes. There are some character standouts. Actually, I think the final boss in that game is super interesting. And I think that game deals with a lot of interesting themes. And Pothead also is one of the first actual characters you meet who you like can actually interact with other than fighting, and so he's a nice bit of relief and things like that. And I think he's a bit amusing. But based on the characters we both already discussed and the ones I know on this list, I feel like he doesn't hang as an individual.
He had some of the funniest lines of the year for me, and kind of straddled that line where like the game straddles with a lot of kind of dark humor. And like the relationship he has with grandma and all that kind of stuff. And the little touch is like, I mean, for a start, he literally is a pot for a head. Mm-hmm. Like when he bows to you.
Motherfucker's name is Pothead. It's great.
And when he bows and the soup kind of pours out of his head. And yeah, I liked him a lot, but like he probably was going to be my number one, but now because of, events that have transpired in the last 15 minutes, I'm actually where I may have been bullish before. I'm fine for him to go now.
Okay, so he is gone. So it's me next. Yikes. Look, I'm seeing a bunch of passion projects, and we already gave her due. So maybe Mantis now.
I don't think Mantis hangs with the rest of these. I think she was a Guardians is kind of another one that kind of like an MCU movie. I feel like it's the whole is more than the sum of the parts. I like Mantis a lot. I don't think.
I guess she's not a core central character.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. She's also not in it enough relative to these. Well, I don't know about Steph, but relative to the other two, Barry's right in and Ethan. I don't think she's in it enough to hang for me.
Yeah, I got into the Galaxy feels like a fantastic theme park ride, and it's like, or just in general being in a theme park, there's like 10, 12 rides you got to get to in this theme park. Mantis is like kind of, she's part of one of the rides or whatever, but like as a whole, as an overall, it's just.
We'll probably mention it later on, but if you want to do like an opposite of least or an opposite of most disappointing game, if you want to talk about like a most surprising game, Guardians probably wins that.
Absolutely,
insanely, with a bullet. Yeah.
Okay. So Mantis is gone. We're down to 3. So do you want to do Steph first or Ethan first, Jack?
I guess I will take Steph because I think in terms of like the amount of Steph related content I've kind of got into, I probably further, like, I know Barry, you said you hadn't finished Life is Strange True Colors, which means you almost certainly
this is probably the section where me and Mark take a break.
Which means you almost certainly haven't played Wavelengths, right?
No.
Okay, so Steph, she was a fringe character in the original Life is Strange game. Like she was kind of like Before the Storm. Sorry, she was kind of like she was into her board games and she was hanging out outside the academy. She had some pretty funny interactions with Chloe and stuff, and everyone liked her. She was cool. What Life is Strange True Colors and specifically Wavelengths does is like really shine a light on a character who I think the most amount of like fan fiction and bits and pieces have been written about. And not only does it deliver, it just opens up like such a beautiful window into the human psyche. And I specifically kind of want to talk about Wavelengths because so Steph arrives in this small town, like obviously a lot of the trauma of what happened in Life is Strange. Spoiler alert for Life is Strange. There was a big storm, and no matter what option you pick, people die, right? So either one of the main characters of the game, Chloe, passes away, or you kill like multiple people in the whole town. So like no matter what version of Steph's backstory that you get given the option to experience in the game, there's trauma there, and specifically trauma related to her being like in this small town environment where everyone kind of knows each other, right? So in between the games, she moves to Seattle. She gets into a relationship with like sort of like the trans singer of this queer punk band that they have, and they're like a two-piece, and they have a great time, and there's lots of like little hints and tips and tricks and moments that allude to the band and kind of how they sounded and how their relationship was throughout both True Colors and Wavelengths, and it's pretty cool. And then you get Steph, and she's kind of you get to have like it's like 5 or 6 different periods throughout the year of her life in the Wavelengths DLC that lead up to her in True Colors, and it's such a beautiful way of showing how people deal with trauma and difficulty and depression and isolation, and like a metaphor for like everything that we've seen kind of in the last year or two that everyone's had to deal with, being alone. Like she's literally stuck as the DJ of like this really small radio station and working in a record store.
Yeah.
And you see her trying to connect with the outside world. She's like, you can use her phone and you can like read through all of her message history, so you understand like how a relationship broke down with this girl that she used to date, and you can go on dating apps and you can kind of interact with people and try and like get her hooked up with other people. But specifically what overhangs her is this trauma, right? So as she's kind of moving through the different seasons, and what's really cool is you like see like one point she's like putting up all of the Pride decorations because it's Pride, then it's like Halloween and Christmas and all of these things, and she's kind of avoiding talking to our old friend Mikey, who's another character from original game in Before the Storm, and it's just like the weight of all of this emotion of like losing the relationship and being back in a small town, did all of this stuff, and it kind of gradually, you can feel it sort of like pressing down on her like throughout the weight of this game, and she has like this big freak out, and there's like it just feels like anytime you don't realize how much you've been affected by something. And I think that's something that goes for everybody. We all kind of just, we're human beings, and we all kind of just, something happens to us and we just deal with it and move along. She ran away to Seattle, and then now she's isolated and she doesn't want to deal with this thing. And then finally it builds up and she's like kind of forced to deal with all of the horrible shitty things that have happened to her. And you have this like beautiful emotional cathartic moment of her going through all of this stuff. She has the chat through with Mikey, she's building a relationship with Gabe, who's one of the main characters in Life is Strange True Colors. And you kind of, through flashbacks of like playing table football and stuff, you can actually play table football in the game, which is a pretty cool mechanic. And you just get this sense of like somebody going on this real journey, and it's just so artfully and beautifully done. Like the creation of this character that you then get in True Colors as like the main love interest of Alex, who's the main character in the game, and it just helps you grow into and understand who this person is and what it makes them tick, how their mind works. And it's just like such a brilliant demonstration of somebody who is so imperfect, but at the same time is completely comfortable with all their flaws, and characterizes that really well. And her as a person and her interaction with other people, she's so funny and she's so cool. But then often the people that are the funniest, the people that seem most at ease with themselves, you realize it's a mask. And getting to see behind that mask of a character who's essentially a side character, like a love interest in a game, getting to see in and delve really deep is something that Life is Strange kind of has the time and way of doing, because the game mechanics are kind of sometimes the least important thing about it. It is all story driven. It's all understanding. And once you get inside Steph and head and understand her, and just you can't help but love her so much. And the way that they put her in Wavelengths, and then you see the last scene of Wavelengths is the first time that she meets Alex in True Colors, and then all the way through True Colors, her interactions with Alex and building this relationship, trying to help her out, trying to be part detective, like part just like the coolest girl in town without like even any effort, and just how integral she is to Alex's kind of not only acclimatization to the town, but also sort of like bringing the more playful, more fun side out of her, and then being serious when she needs to, and kind of being a good supportive, emotional like landing ground for anything Alex has got to say to her. Like she just does it so well, and that extra level of that DLC, it's kind of like you almost wish it was sandwiched in the middle of the game, even though I don't know any game that would take like a 6-hour detour to understand another character better and then come back to the main story. But they were released within like 2 or 3 weeks of each other, so they are very much part of the same package. Like it's not like we had to wait, like previous Life is Strange is like 2-3 months, whatever, down the line. But she's just such a brilliant character, and it's honestly one of those things, again, like you were saying with the character for Cruller, where it's all of the sadness or whatever that lurks within his brain and trying to understand it. All of the character traits that you've ever seen Steph have, you understand where they come from and what it is about them, and the metaphor of like the whole time that she's actually developing as a person. She's changing the record store to her specifications. She's improving the radio station. She's tidying things up. She's making everything better. And then at the end of the game, it is the fully realized awesome record store that you see when you walk into the town. And Haven Springs is beautiful, by the way. It's really incredible, how detailed it is. And you see that fully realized record store when you go into the game for the first time, but when you go into the record store for the first time, it's not like that. And it's just such a great metaphor for her growing as a character and her sorting her shit out in her life, and the record store are kind of at the same level. It's just so good. I recommend playing through it if any of this kind of sounds interesting to you.
Absolutely.
It's just fantastic. I love Steph so much, and I don't know that she can win this because it's me on my own saying how much I love a character that I've just had to explain and probably won't have the level of emotional feeling. But Jesus Christ, like it's just the storytelling in these games is so good. I love it so much. But yeah, that's Steph from me.
For a massive tonal shift, I will now turn over to Barry to talk about indestructible himbo of the year, Ethan Winters.
This motherfucker gets his hand cut off.
That is his hand being cut off is maybe only the third worst thing that happens to his hand.
Yeah,
it is. It is that is effectively his character trait. Yeah, Ethan is kind of like he is kind of the I was about to say self-aware. I suppose it's kind of like Hitman in that he isn't self-aware, but the game knows what it's doing with Ethan. Yeah. And it's kind of like he really is. He has that dumb himbo energy where he every now and then has he has quite a lot of one-liners, and some of them are good and some of them are so unbelievably lame that you can't help but just be endeared to him by them because they're lame. Yeah. Because he's also the classic like horror movie, not even just game, but like horror movie, bad decision maker, stupid question asker. I couldn't believe that scene early on in the game where you first witness all the transformations and he's like trying to drive this car through the wall. I'm like, how is this your plan? What is that?
My thing about as well as the decision making and stuff like that, one of my favorite things about Ethan, and it's across 7 and Village, is how Ethan consistently is both utterly horrified and traumatized by everything that happens, but is also completely unsurprised and goes along with these things very quickly.
Yeah.
There's a moment, now we can talk about it. I didn't talk about it when I played Village originally on the cast, but now we're in spoiler territory quite firmly here. I was like, there is a point, and Jack and Barry, you've played through the game, so maybe this is only a surprise to Mark, if it even is a surprise to Mark. There's a point in this game, like after you beat the first boss, Lady Dimitrescu, where you get a jar, and you go back to the Duke with this jar, and he's like, I need to find my daughter. And he goes, you should look no further. And you look down at the jar and the jar says torso.
Yeah.
So basically you have to, each of the bosses in their strongholds has a chopped up part of your infant daughter in a jar that you need to put into this plinth to unlock the final part of the game. And Ethan is traumatized by having to do fetch quest for his dismembered daughter in a bunch of jars. He is traumatized where by for about 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And then he's kind
And
of
then he's like, well, I better go get those flasks.
and they're fucking just
And
truck
then he's
on
like
with this.
mildly bothered by having to go do it, you know?
Yeah,
It's just
exactly.
So,
And then there are some things like there are some monsters where like he sees the monsters like oh god, and then there's other ones that are like I'm horrified by playing it, and he's just like fucking well it's just another day in the life.
sometimes he's screaming in horror, other times he's like, what the fuck was this?
There's one point, and it's way too far into this game for it to be a surprise revelation to him, where he just like screams to himself something to the effect of, "Why does this keep happening to me?"
Yes. Like, what the hell, man? Look at the situation you're in.
He's at once like, because the story is about him and his family, and how like he has somehow been entwined in this grand thing of which he's not really a part, but it's also his fate to be a part of it. This whole thing that's going on.
Well, his missus gets murdered within the first 5 minutes of the game.
But also she doesn't.
Yeah, I know, but like I'm saying what you see.
Much like in 7, she gets killed, but she doesn't.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's great. But he is at once this character where like you're learning a lot about his life and it's all about him, but he's also the blankest fucking slate you've ever seen in your life. And it's an amazing tightrope act they walk for the whole length of the game. And I love it. And there's a moment I remember, so like rather than like play it through again halfway through the year, I was tremendously entertained watching Barry play this on Twitch. And I knew there was a moment where so again, spoiler. There's a moment where he is battling Heisenberg. And I know what happens. And Ethan dies. And Barry had this quandary about like, he didn't know whether it'd be better if Ethan is just dead and that's it, or he somehow comes back. And knowing that Barry had the next hour of game to play through, where it just like as bananas as things had gone to that point,
it
goes absolutely
mental.
nuts, and Ethan does come back.
Yeah, of course he does.
And not only does he come back in that game, you find out like for the whole duration of this game, he's been 6 Sense Bruce Willis.
Yeah,
and he's been, and they're like, you fucking died in Resident Evil 7 is the big twist.
Yeah, Mark, you find out that Ethan actually died in the first 10 minutes of the last game before he even gets dragged into the house he was killed.
And that's how, and then they find a
but
weird,
it's but like
stupid,
I know it sounds stupid, but it's like the best kind of stupid.
They
it's
find
like
this dumb in-universe explanation for why he constantly gets limbs chopped off, but is able to put them back on and put first aid spray on them, and then it works.
Yeah,
they actually find an in-universe explanation for
when
that.
he's doing this, like when he's getting like his hand specifically gets mutilated like 6 ways from Sunday in this game. Like he gets a hook through it, he gets fingers cut off, he gets the hand full on chopped off, and you're like, this is a really dumb video gamey thing when they're trying to like make things look a bit more realistic. Like at one point, as Barry said, he literally gets the hand chopped off and he pours some spirits on it and just pops the hand back on. And you're like, that's really fucking dumb. And then because then when they pay off like as Barry said, the silly in-universe reason, instead of being like, oh, this is stupid, you're like, fucking yes.
So is he like a reanimated corpse then? Is that the deal?
So it's because when he was killed,
actually, you know what? Don't fucking explain it to me, because I'm just going to be sitting like,
in short, when he was killed in the first game, he became part of that moldy stuff that you see in the last game. Is it the Mega Mycete it's called?
Mycete,
you know, the ultimate, he actually does die for real at the very end. So he dies a second time, but it's because he is destroying the micromycete, and by destroying that and killing Mother Miranda,
it kills him as well.
Yeah.
And it's just like, because even the section we mentioned there earlier where he gets his hand
Mark's
cut off.
face, by the way, when you said that, he was so unimpressed.
The animation, like even when he gets it cut off the first time, it's Lady D still alive. She's the first boss you fight, which is a weird thing about this game, is that she's front loaded for this game. Is that pun not intended? But the animation where he gets his hand cut off is so fucking stupid like comedic anime shit. He grabs an elevator, a big over the top like lever, and pulls it down. And she literally does almost like the thing where they quickly take their sword out and then reholster it. She like, you don't even see it pass through. You just see a flash on the screen, and his hand is completely, perfectly, pristinely sliced off.
Yeah, surgically,
and he just looks at it. And he goes, ah! He looks at his stomach,
yeah.
and it's just so stupid.
That's the thing with Ethan, though, is that like the one thing I found really difficult is like, you know how dumb he is. It's like, I've spent like fucking hours trying to get you through these situations, trying to get you to survive, and then there's so many times in the game where you're just like, no, Ethan, Ethan, what are you doing? Don't go over there.
We'll talk about it in later categories, but one of the things I really love about his character, and it's the thing I love broadly about Resident Evil Village, is the fact that the people, it's kind of like you said, Barry, the people making this game know exactly what Resident Evil is, and they're like, we are fucking going for this.
We're going to Wacky Town.
I do appreciate like after the kind of shambles the series went through at like 5 and 6, that they did kind of really understand like what this game is and what it's meant to be. And I've never been the biggest kind of Resident Evil fan, but I do appreciate that they just kind of leaned back into just the sheer absurdity of what this series
we're
is.
Going to talk about some shit later.
I'm sure we are.
Yeah. So let's park that for now. Right, we've got 3 names left. I'm kind of, much as we've just proselytized for Ethan there, I think our chat earlier about Ford Cruller has put me on the Ford Cruller train.
Yeah.
And I think I'd be willing to cast my vote for Ford at this point.
I find it really difficult that we don't get to poll the people on this one, because that's the one thing about the writing. It's like, it's almost like a deceit. It's like
Jack,
deceit. Though,
also shut up, because if it ends up getting tied and going to the poll, then you'll definitely win.
Yeah, but I don't think Mark is gonna. I think Mark is just gonna vote for Ford Cruller because that's the game of the 3 that he's played.
Yeah, no, but even like, because I did watch and see, and I got enough of Resident Evil to understand like Ethan and what was going on. And yes, unfortunately, I didn't like spend any time with Life is Strange, as is the case every single year when we have this situation occur with Life is Strange. But no, genuinely, it is an oversight on my part that I didn't have a single Psychonauts character on there, and I don't have a good explanation for why. But like everything that's been said here, Ford Cruller should be on this list. And while, yes, okay, I guess it might be unfair that if this was to go to a tiebreaker, then he wouldn't win. But it's not going to go to a tiebreaker by the sounds of it. So then, therefore, it sounds like he probably should win if it ends up being that 3 of us vote for him.
Yeah,
not saying that is what's going to happen here.
I love Ethan, like you read about, and of the initial 10, he was getting my vote. But one, having finished Psychonauts since we initially like put in our shortlists at the start of December, and 2, the more I talked about him here and the more we all thought about it and gave our takes on it, the more like I was like, fucking yeah, like that was an incredible, like one of the best written characters maybe in the last couple of years in a video game for me.
Oh, please play through Life is Strange.
Because,
LA Wave, like, because honestly, it feel like it matches it.
And as well, like we kind of need to have the sort of last minute writing section, because we try and get all of our stuff, like our nominations, in at the start of December. There's a 3-week gap there or thereabouts. Like I've been playing through a whole bunch of Lost Judgment, and like I will probably want to give it a shout out in a couple of categories later on.
Didn't we write in a Pokemon game one year? Because it came out, was it Sun and Moon came out, or Sword and Shield came out after the cutoff?
Maybe.
Or we only got to it after the cutoff, or something.
I would have played it the day it came out.
There's definitely been a couple of big ones we've written in before. I mean, I don't think any write-in has ever won.
We literally created a category on the fly. All right, so
yeah, to be fair, yeah.
I guess it was me that created the category as well.
Yeah, there you go.
Look, I feel like I don't agree with it, but like I'm outvoted, so I don't really have much of a choice.
If there wanted to be an executive decision for next year to say no write-ins, I would be totally. I think that's fair. Yeah. Well, actually, that's a separate conversation. But I would say this year, I mean, it's all.
I don't think so.
I agree with Dave. I think like I almost always to the day my Christmas holidays coincide with running up to this show, and all I've done has been play stuff.
Yeah.
There's always going to be write-ins.
No, I would never want to get rid of the write-ins for stuff like this, because I would be fuming sitting here not being able to give Psychonauts its due.
Yeah,
you know,
and I know there is always stuff that if you don't get it in time, you're raging when you do get to it in January. But
because
man, if I played Psychonauts tomorrow,
we'll never
be
get
like,
another chat. Like, Lord knows if there ever will be a Psychonauts 3. There fucking should be. And if they told me it was out next week, I would be hyped as hell.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we'll ever get another. And yeah. Anyway, let's move on because our winner in Character of the Year is Ford Cruller from Psychonauts 2. Yay. Lads, the listener poll for best character was tense. We have one winner by less than 3% of the vote, ahead of two that are tied in second, and they themselves are less than 4% ahead of two tied in fourth and fifth.
Wow.
So winning the vote with 20.7% of the vote is Agent 47.
Wow.
Yeah.
There you go.
Wow.
Tied.
Do you know what? I should have stuck it out for Agent 47, tried to get a tie and win it with Agent.
Do you know what's funny? We would have been in trouble, because if Ford Cruller hadn't been written in, tied for second and third are Steph and Ethan.
Wow.
So
we wouldn't have even had a winner with the poll, but
nope,
we
would have been deadlocked.
Okay.
And then fourth and fifth are Heisenberg and Cosmo.
Do you know what? I'm really happy that there is a portion of people that listen to the show that did play that and appreciate how good the characterization of Steph was. So that kind of makes me feel happy.
Yeah. Now we're going to be doing the forensic investigation of Jack's aliases. See if they're all coming from the same IP address.
Jack B.
One.
No,
I did one ballot.
Jacqueline.
I didn't even put my own name on it. I called it a dumbass name. But yeah, like that's cool. And those people, I really appreciate you trying to have my back here. But I've been beaten.
Yeah. Soundly
by a write-in character that I didn't even see coming.
He'll be talking about this one for the year.
Yeah, look, I said it at the start of the show. All joking aside, putting the pretenses to one, I really want to play Psychonauts 2. I just didn't get to it, so I might well agree with you when I do eventually play it. So it is what it is.
Let's talk about Tetris Effect again.
How long into this show before that was coming up? Right. Moving on.